Ethan Cole adjusted the stiff collar of his academy uniform and stared at the assignment brief glowing across his datapad screen. The words seemed simple, even childish. Bring a companion creature from your homeworld to the next class session. It should reflect your species' bond with other life forms. For most students at the Interspecies Academy, this was little more than an excuse to flaunt their exotic fauna. For Ethan, it was a challenge dressed up as a task. He could already imagine the laughter. He had heard it before, in the cafeteria, in the halls, whispered when they thought he couldn't hear. Humans were still the novelty of the Academy, a recent addition to the galactic stage. Among species who had mapped constellations when humanity was still painting caves, humans carried the weight of inferiority like an unwanted badge. His classmates were male heirs to proud civilizations. Tvar, the reptilian whose people tamed magma-dwelling drakes. Korin, the insectoid whose hive-bred guardians could crush steel with their mandibles. Dalik, the crystalline-born whose kin bonded with symbiotic shards that resonated with lethal frequencies. They strutted through the academy, their creatures symbols of lineage and dominance. Ethan knew they expected him to shuffle in with a dog wagging its tail or a cat purring meekly on his lap. The memory of their sneers clung to him. He recalled Tvar's scaly grin when, during a debate, Ethan had mentioned wolves. Primitive scavengers, Tvar had said, his classmates chittering in agreement. Korin's mandibles clicked in mocking rhythm. Perhaps you'll bring us a mouse, human. Or a feathered singing thing. The words were sharp, but the undertone sharper still. You do not belong among us. Ethan clenched his fists at the recollection, then forced his hands open. Anger would not serve him here. But neither would meekness. If humanity was to earn a place among the stars, someone had to show the others that humans were not a species of weakness. He would not walk into that class carrying a token of docility. He would not let them laugh. His gaze shifted to the small holophoto resting on his desk. The image shimmered into the figure of a great striped beast, amber eyes glinting even in miniature projection. Raja. The name itself carried weight, a king's title. Years ago, Ethan had visited the Terran Wildlife Reserve where Raja lived. He remembered the raw silence that fell over the human spectators when the tiger padded into view, its muscles rippling beneath orange and black fur. It had not performed for them, had not needed to. Its presence was performance enough, unquestioned majesty born of tooth and claw. Ethan had felt fear, yes, but also reverence. That was the difference. Other species seemed to tame through dominance or extermination. Humanity, for all its flaws, had chosen to coexist with predators that could tear them apart. They had forged bonds with wolves, ridden horses into battle, and now, cautiously, maintained reserves for apex creatures like Raja. It was not mastery alone. It was respect. The idea had taken root then, stubborn as a weed. And now, with the assignment before him, it bloomed into certainty. He would bring Raja. The decision was not without weight. Tigers were not pets. They were not domesticated companions but lords of their domain, kept under the strictest conditions even on Earth. Bringing one across interstellar travel required authorization, specialized containment, and courage bordering on recklessness. Ethan knew the risks, both to himself and to those around him. Yet the alternative, humiliation and continued dismissal of his species, burned hotter than fear. He reached for the secure comm line, entering codes he had memorized during long nights of planning. The director of the Wildlife Reserve appeared, his lined face weary but kind. Ethan made his case carefully, explaining the assignment, the mockery, and what this moment could mean not only for himself, but for human representation at the Academy. The director hesitated, warned of danger, questioned his judgment. Ethan met each concern with steady resolve. After a long silence, the man finally nodded. You will have your tiger, Cadet Cole. But understand, he is not your servant. He is your partner, and you must treat him as such. The following days blurred into preparation. Specialized transport pods were arranged, permits secured. Academy officials reluctantly convinced. Ethan spent hours reviewing Raja's care protocols, his feeding schedule, his temperament markers. He memorized every signal, every gesture that might mean the difference between calm and catastrophe. More than once, he asked himself if he had gone mad. But each doubt was answered by the image of Tvar's mocking grin, of Corin's clicking mandibles, of the quiet smirk that passed across the faces of his peers when he entered a room. The shuttle ride to the Academy's docking bay felt both endless and immediate. Through the transparent partition, he glimpsed Raja within the containment field. The tiger's eyes locked with his, unblinking, steady. There was no malice in them, only the untamed presence of a creature that owed no allegiance, yet granted its focus. Ethan felt his pulse steady. If fear existed in him, it would be his to master. When the pod hissed open, the scent of fur and earth spilled into the sterile air of the bay. Raja stepped out with a fluid grace that seemed to mock the machinery surrounding him. Ethan walked beside the tiger, his hand resting lightly against the air harness that kept the creature tethered but not restrained. Each step echoed louder than the clang of ships or the chatter of cadets passing by. Whispers followed them, curious eyes widening at the sight. Ethan ignored them. His focus narrowed to the path ahead, to the classroom where expectation waited like a trap. Tomorrow, when he entered, every sneer would be tested, every assumption broken. The risk was immense, but so was the reward. Humanity had long been underestimated, dismissed as fragile. Now they would see a fragment of the truth, that Earth's children walked with kings. As Raja settled in his temporary habitat, muscles coiled in restless ease, Ethan allowed himself a breath. The die was cast and retreat was no longer an option. In less than a day, the classroom would become a stage, and his tiger the revelation. Whether he emerged as fool or pioneer would depend on what happened next, but for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt anticipation sharpened not by fear but by purpose. The night was restless, his dreams filled with prowling shadows and the echo of low, resonant growls. Yet when he woke, he smiled. The game had already begun, and tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that humans were never meant to be the weakest voice in the room. "You said." The lecture hall buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the mingled sense of alien creatures and their owners' pride. Rows of students settled into place, each male cadet displaying the fruits of his world's legacy. Tvar, scales glistening under the overhead lights, sat tall beside a reptilian beast whose armored hide shimmered with volcanic hues. The creature's nostrils flared, exhaling faint sparks as if eager to ignite something in its path. Corin, mandibles clacking in smug rhythm, stroked the iridescent shell of his hive guardian, its claws scraping faint grooves into the reinforced floor. Dalik's crystalline companion pulsed with eerie luminescence, every shimmer a reminder of the resonant frequencies it could unleash with destructive force. Each student carried himself with the confidence of heritage, a silent chorus declaring that their species belonged at the summit of the galaxy's hierarchy. Their conversations circled like predators themselves. Tvar boasted of his drake's volcanic nesting grounds, recounting legends of its forebears devouring entire caravans. Corin chimed in with acid-etched scars left by his guardian on rivals during ceremonial trials. Even Dalik, normally reserved, allowed his crystalline tones to ripple with satisfaction as his shard being emitted a low hum that made the air vibrate. The room echoed with arrogance, and threaded through it all was the expectation of one absence: Ethan Cole, the human. "Perhaps he will bring one of those domesticated canines," Tvar sneered, his voice carrying effortlessly. "They fetch sticks, do they not?" A fitting display of human ingenuity. Laughter clattered around him, sharp as broken glass. "Or one of their feathered companions," Corin added, mandibles clicking. "Sing a song, roll over, then be eaten by a real predator." More laughter, cruel and certain. Dr. Helrose, the avian professor whose feathers shimmered faintly with the sheen of age, ruffled his plumage in restrained irritation. His sharp eyes scanned the room, measuring pride against discipline. He had taught long enough to know the cruelty of cadet rivalries, but even he wondered what spectacle the human boy would attempt. When the assignment had been given, Helrose had envisioned a dog or perhaps a falcon. Safe, unremarkable, easily dismissed. It was, after all, what most of the academy expected. Then the doors opened. The sound was not remarkable, just the hiss of hydraulics releasing their seal, but silence fell across the hall as if the air itself recognized what entered. Ethan stepped through, posture calm, every movement deliberate. Beside him padded Raja. The tiger's striped coat caught the sterile lighting, its orange deep as smoldering embers, its black bands sharp as drawn blades. Each step was silent power, muscle flowing beneath fur with liquid grace. Raja's eyes swept across the room, molten gold meeting the gaze of alien beasts without flinch or hesitation. One by one, the so-called predators shrank, their bodies retreating a fraction though their masters tugged on restraints. Even the crystalline shard dimmed its hum, the rhythm faltering. Ethan said nothing. He did not need to. The weight of Raja's presence spoke louder than any boast. He walked to an open space, gesturing lightly with his hand. The tiger sat with casual obedience, tail curling against the polished floor. The silence stretched, tense and taut, until Tvar broke it with a scoff. "This is your companion?" The reptilian jeered, though his drake had already shifted behind his legs, sparks sputtering uncertainly. "A beast of fur and teeth. Nothing more." Dr. Hellrose tilted his head, feathers prickling. His voice carried measured curiosity, but beneath it ran an undercurrent of unease. "Cadet Cole, explain this creature." Ethan's voice was steady. "This is Raja, a tiger of Earth, apex predator of his world." The words hung in the air. Apex. A concept not foreign to these cadets, but rarely spoken with such simplicity. An apex creature did not submit. It ruled by nature's decree. To bring one into the academy was unthinkable. Corin's mandibles clattered again, this time less certain. Trained, perhaps. But strength fades before acid. Watch closely. He tapped his guardian's carapace. The insectoid beast hissed, mandibles dripping with caustic fluid as it reared. Raja did not move. Only his eyes shifted, fixing upon the insectoid with a gaze that was not rage, but judgment. Then the tiger's growl unfurled, low and resonant, vibrating through the floor, through bone, through the fragile certainties of every cadet present. The guardian froze. Its mandibles stopped clattering, legs trembling with the instinct to retreat. Ethan raised his hand, palm downward. Raja ceased at once, growl vanishing as if it had never been. The silence returned, more suffocating than before. Dr. Hellrose exhaled, though his feathers remained unsettled. Remarkable control. And yet, his eyes narrowed. Control over such a beast is tenuous at best. What compels you to risk this display? Ethan met his gaze evenly. Because humanity is not a species of weakness. We coexist with danger. We learn from it. We choose respect, not extermination. The words pressed into the cadets, leaving no space for laughter. Even Tvar's sneer faltered, though pride forced him to speak again. Words mean little. Let us see whose companion proves stronger. The challenge hung unspoken yet undeniable. Dr. Hellrose hesitated, aware of the peril, but his role as instructor demanded trials, demanded proof. Around them, creatures shifted restlessly, as if sensing what was to come. Ethan laid a hand on Raja's shoulder, feeling the rumble of life beneath the stripes. He did not smile, did not gloat. He only whispered so that none but the tiger could hear. "Tomorrow, they will understand." The hall stirred again, the tension unresolved, the promise of confrontation simmering in every restless glance. What had begun as a simple assignment had become something larger, a reckoning between perception and truth, between arrogance and revelation. And though the room eventually filled with murmurs once more, the center of gravity had shifted. For the first time, the cadets were not laughing at the human. They were measuring him. "You said." The arena was a vast chamber of reinforced alloy and shifting panels, its walls embedded with containment fields designed to endure the violent displays of alien creatures. The cadets filed into the viewing platforms, their earlier arrogance tempered by unease, yet pride compelled them to mask it. Tvar strutted forward, scales gleaming, his reptilian drake hissing at the scent of challenge in the air. Corrin followed, mandibles clicking in anticipation, while Dalik's crystalline companion pulsed with a cold, calculating rhythm. Dr. Helrose presided from above, his feathers unsettled as though each ruffle betrayed doubt about his decision to permit this test. Still, as an instructor, he could not deny the lesson such a confrontation might yield. Tvar spoke first, his tone sharpened with venom. Let us strip away illusions. A beast is only as worthy as its power. My drake will show this human's pet for what it is. He released the leash with a flourish, and the drake bounded into the arena, claws raking sparks across the floor. The cadets erupted in approving roars and clicks as the reptile reared high, exhaling a burst of molten sparks into the air. The heat washed across the chamber, proof of its elemental bloodline. Next came Corrin. He commanded his hive guardian forward, the insectoid beast dripping acid from its mandibles that hissed and smoked where it fell. Its armored carapace glistened, ridges designed to repel blades and plasma alike. It screeched, a piercing tone that rattled the ears of every onlooker. Then Dalik allowed his shard being to resonate, a chorus of crystalline tones swelling as energy built within the creature's core until arcs of sonic force rippled outward, bending light with their vibration. Each cadet's companion flaunted its might, demonstrations intended to remind everyone of ancient legacies and the superiority of their lineages. And then, with no grand gesture, Ethan walked into the arena beside Raja. The tiger's paws made no sound, yet every step drew the weight of a drumbeat. Unlike the others, Raja offered no fireworks, no hiss or screech. He simply moved, his body a study in controlled menace, his gaze fixed and unyielding. The alien beasts, still restless from their displays, hesitated as his golden eyes swept over them. Dr. Helrose gave the signal. The test had begun. Tvar's drake lunged first, jaws snapping wide, sparks spraying in anticipation of flesh and fur. The crowd shouted in approval, expecting the tiger to flinch or flee. Instead, Raja pivoted with predatory precision, his massive paw slamming down upon the drake's snout with a thunderous crack. The reptile staggered, dazed, its sparks sputtering out in a hiss of smoke. Raja growled, low and primal, the sound slicing through the arena louder than any flame. Corrin's guardian skittered forward next, its mandibles dripping streams of acid. It struck fast, claws clattering against the floor, but Raja sidestepped, movements flowing like water. The tiger lashed out with claws that raked across the insectoid's armored side. Sparks flew, carapace dented, the beast screeched in protest. The guardian pressed again, but when Raja met it head-on, his weight and strength drove it back, forcing the creature to collapse against the barrier fields with a shrill hiss of defeat. The shard being advanced last, its crystalline hum growing into a shriek of resonant energy. The air itself shivered, waves distorting sight and sound. Some cadets shielded their ears, their bodies trembling from the vibration. Ethan steadied himself, his voice calm but firm. Raja. The tiger crouched low, eyes locked on the luminous core of the shard creature. Then, with a single bound, he leapt through the vibrating waves, the force cutting shallow lines across his fur. He landed with crushing momentum, claws digging into the alloy floor inches from the shard being. The crystal's resonance faltered, then fractured into silence. It dimmed, collapsing its tones into nothingness. The arena went quiet. The alien beasts that had strutted so boldly now huddled back against the walls, unwilling to challenge the predator that stood unshaken. Raja padded back to Ethan, his sides heaving with steady breaths, but no trace of exhaustion. He lowered himself into a calm sit, as if the ordeal had been nothing more than a casual stroll. The cadets whispered among themselves, disbelief threading their voices. Their proud companions had been humbled not by violence alone but by the sheer presence of Earth's predator and the bond that restrained it from finality. The true revelation was not that Raja could kill, but that he chose not to when commanded. Tvar's face burned with humiliation, scales shifting in agitation. It was luck, he hissed. though his voice cracked. An accident of surprise. No, Dr. Helrose countered, his avian tones sharp, his eyes fixed on Ethan. It was discipline. The beast acted with precision, then obeyed, without hesitation. Control such as this is rare, even among our most ancient bonds. Corin clicked his mandibles, struggling against the tremor of unease.
But why?
Why would such a predator submit? Ethan's hand rested lightly on Raj's striped fur. His answer carried no arrogance, only certainty. Because he does not submit. He chooses. Our bond is not forged by dominance, but by respect. Humanity has walked beside predators since its dawn. We do not destroy what we fear. We endure, we learn, and we earn their trust. The cadets fell silent. Even those who had mocked him hours before stared as though a veil had lifted, revealing something they had overlooked. Humanity, a species dismissed as fragile, had revealed a truth none had expected. They were capable of making allies of monsters. Raj's golden eyes swept the chamber once more, unchallenged. In that silence, every cadet knew the test was over. Ethan had not only defended his species' dignity, he had redefined it. Dr. Helrose finally rose, feathers settling into uneasy calm. This lesson, he said slowly, will not be forgotten. And in the charged quiet that followed, Ethan understood that the Academy would never look at him, or at humanity, the same way again. The arena emptied slowly, cadets filing out in silence broken only by the shuffle of boots and the faint hiss of containment fields powering down. The air still carried the tang of acid and the burnt metal scent of sparks, yet beneath it lingered something heavier. The weight of realization. No one spoke to Ethan directly, but every glance lingered on him longer than before. Every whisper carried a new edge. Where once there had been mockery, there was now calculation, as though each student measured the implications of what they had witnessed. Dr. Helrose descended from the observation deck, his wings folding tightly against his body. His eyes, sharp and avian, studied Ethan with something close to suspicion, though curiosity outweighed it. "You must understand what you have done," he said, his tone clipped. "A display such as this will echo beyond these walls. Why, Cole? Why bring a beast that embodies danger, when you could have chosen safety?" Ethan met his gaze steadily. Raja crouched beside him, silent and regal, his fur still bristling faintly from exertion. "Because safety convinces no one," Ethan replied. "Humans are judged as fragile. If I had brought something tame, I would have proven them right. But our history is not one of fragility. We survive beside the things that should have ended us. We respect them, and in return, they walk with us." Helrose tilted his head, feathers rustling. Respect. An unusual philosophy. Most civilizations build dominance over predators, or exterminate them to secure control. To invite them into your lives, are reckless at best, suicidal at worst. "It's what makes us who we are," Ethan said quietly. He rested his hand on Raja's shoulder, feeling the steady pulse of life beneath muscle and bone. "We don't erase danger. We endure it until it becomes part of us. That's what they don't understand yet." Behind him, Tvar emerged from the shadows, his scales dimmed with shame, yet his jaw clenched in defiance. "This changes nothing," he hissed. "Your beast humiliated mine, but one battle does not make your kind strong. Power is measured in empires, not animals." Ethan turned, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Then perhaps you should ask yourself why your empire's predator flinched before mine. Power is not only what you can destroy. It is what chooses to stand beside you when it does not have to." The words stung more deeply than Tvar cared to admit. He bared his teeth but offered no retort, retreating with a flick of his tail, his pride wounded far more than his drake. Corin lingered longer, mandibles twitching in restless thought. "You risked your life walking beside that creature," he said finally. "And yet it listened to you. Not with fear. With something else." His multifaceted eyes reflected confusion, even admiration. "Perhaps that is why your species survived long enough to find the stars." Ethan offered no reply, but Corin's words hung in the air like a truth too dangerous to ignore. Dalik approached last, his crystalline companion flickering faintly at his side. His voice reverberated with layered tones, carrying no mockery, only quiet certainty. Fear binds most creatures. Yours is bound by choice. That is rarer than any power we know. The Academy will not ignore this. Nor will the galaxy. When the others had gone, Ethan remained with Raja in the now empty arena. The tiger's breathing was slow, calm, as though the confrontation had been little more than a passing storm. Ethan crouched beside him, staring into those golden eyes. "We did it," he murmured. "They saw you, and through you they saw us." Raja blinked, tail flicking once in languid acknowledgement, as if amused by the human's need for words. That night, whispers spread like wildfire through the Academy. Stories of the human who had brought a predator into the heart of their halls, who had humbled the proud beasts of older species, who had spoken of respect instead of domination. Some dismissed it as spectacle. Others pondered the deeper truth. But none could erase the image of the striped king, seated calmly beside his human, unshaken in a chamber meant to test supremacy. In his quarters, Ethan replayed the day's events in his mind. He knew this was only the beginning. The cadets would carry tales back to their homeworlds. Leaders would hear them, perhaps laugh, perhaps fear. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, seen as newcomers fumbling in a galaxy of ancient powers. Now they would be measured differently, not as weak, but as unpredictable, as a species that could forge alliances not even with empires, but with the very monsters others chose to destroy. He stared out the viewport at the stars, feeling both the immensity of the galaxy and the smallness of his place within it. Yet a quiet pride stirred. He had not only defended himself. He had spoken, through action, for an entire species still finding its footing among the stars. Raja stirred behind him, stretching before settling once more, his massive form filling the room with a presence that words could never capture. Ethan turned, watching the rise and fall of his breath. A thought surfaced, unbidden but certain. Humanity's strength was not in dominance, but in bonds. They did not conquer to stand atop ruins. They endured, adapted, and earned the companionship of what others feared. The next morning, as he walked through the Academy halls, silence followed him. Not the silence of dismissal, but the silence of respect, wary and uncertain. When one cadet finally asked in a hushed voice, "What does that make humans?" Ethan paused. He glanced at Raja, who padded beside him with calm authority and answered without hesitation, "The species that befriends the monsters." The words spread faster than rumor, repeated with awe and unease alike. And as Raja's golden eyes swept the corridor, every creature present lowered its gaze. For the first time, humanity had claimed its place not through technology or conquest, but through something far older, something no other species seemed to understand. The galaxy would not forget. "You said,"